Welcome back, Keepers of the Flame. Okay, so in my last video, I touched on the Devil card. I need to set a timer or whatever for this. But anyway, so I touched on the Devil card having the masculine and the feminine in chains. And again, my interpretation of that card is that he's holding the torch up going, did you want to stay like this or do you want to not be like this anymore? Because in reality, all relationships are like that. It's a slave master narrative. I'm going to provide you this and you're going to provide me that without anyone really consenting to any of this. Okay. And I have yet to witness a couple that's moving forward in a purposeful, directed, healthy modality. I have yet to witness that. I'm waiting. I'm not closed off to it. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. But I mean, I feel like I'm going to have to go island hopping at this point. I mean, and that's not a good thing right now because most of them are. Okay. So, my lovely little line for this, and I love it, is the cracks let the light shine in. So, where's the cracks? Obviously. When the pain comes in, and that's your crack, that's when you crack open. That's why they call it a broken heart. When the crack happens, and maybe I should stop using that particular language. When the break happens, the light seeps in and you're able to see, okay, the pain is here. It's showing up for a reason. It's not because I'm being too sensitive or the other person, blah, blah, blah. You know, pain shows up where it shows up for a reason. And again, the dismissal that is almost all pervasive in any sort of therapy and invalidated and shuffled aside as if pain were nothing. It's almost like an epidemic. It's just an epidemic. Like, and I get that the victim competition used to be a real big thing. At least it's not in my circles anymore, but it might be still a big thing. The victim competition, where my feelings are more hurt than your feelings. So therefore, we don't have to address your feelings because my feelings are way more important because mine are hurted or they're more or hurted more hurt. Okay? The victim competition is what basically all relationships boil down to is you know, he did that, so blah 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 blah. Well, she did that, so blah 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 blah. He So what, they cancel each other out? It's constant back and forth. You see it. This is why I don't work with couples. I can't deal with it. I'm like, it feels like they want you to hand them a trophy or a medal for having the bloodiest, most torn apart heart. And I'm like, I don't think that's how that's supposed to work. I think we're supposed to say, okay, when you do this, when you, whatever this thing, it's not meant to hurt. But it is hurting. So can we figure out a different way where both parties still have their sovereign, autonomous nature and can move forward together? And the resounding answer to that is usually no. So my question then soon became, then what the hell are we even doing here? What is this even for? What function does this have? What is it? It's serving the system, otherwise we wouldn't be driving it forward the way we are. It clearly has a service here. Where's the service? Where's the service? Okay. And then you've got to ask yourself, who really has the power and dynamic in the situation. So then you get into the history of it, which is not pretty. It is not pretty. It is slave master all the way. 1974 in the US, women were finally allowed to spend the money that they themselves went out and worked for without having a male needing to sign off on the paperwork for them to spend. Can't imagine all the ways that was taken advantage of. Excuse me while I throw up a little bit in my mouth. Okay. Now, for those of you who can't perceive what the fuck I just said, the slaves were white women in this scenario. And I'm sure in African American communities as well. Okay. And if you were a native, reservations were not helped at all. Okay. Okay. Hot button. No hot pockets today. Hopefully. Okay. I'm not promising. I'm aiming. Okay. So the narrative behind that construct, again, this is law. This was written into law. Women could not, this is, and again, this is biblically tied. For I will never understand anyone at all who has the freaking narrative that our forefathers were not religious in any way. They were Freemasons, for fuck's sakes. That's about as shithole religion as you get, kids. Yeah, but they were really smart. You see the mess we're dealing with right now? I don't think that's the case. I think they just saw a power grab and they're like, let's do it. Okay? That has nothing to do with the human intelligence. It doesn't. Look at the outcome. The outcome is the level of intelligence, which is, in my humble opinion. So when we have the narrative, right, that we're fed and given without ability to really ask the important question, it's, does this serve humanity? Or does it serve the individual and the system which overrides the individual? Because that's all we've seen from the system. It's constantly overriding individuals' rights. Constantly over. Well, then why were the women allowed to spend their own monies if the system was there to override the rights? Because the system had pegged the Y chromosome and going, this is our future labor force. We can't fuck with it. So we need to empower it to give it more rights. Because this is our future slave labor force. Okay. I know. Straight out of left field. That's my job. Okay. So when we have this construct of a narrative that, again, is glued onto us with no explanation, no wherewithal, how the fuck we're supposed to proceed with this narrative, we're left to our own devices, and then we have an entire population that is used to ruling over the female population. They are used to that. They are programmed for that. They are told that that is their job, to rule over the roost. They wear the pants and whatever else, even though you'll talk to a lot of people that say, no, my mother wore the pants in that household. Yeah. That's pretty much the only way humanity has ever survived, is when women have control and power, but they have to wear it behind the scenes, right? They have to. Men just have this innate thing, like they just want to go do, and women have this innate thing and be like, hey babe, could we like sit down and talk about that first, please? Okay. And then, the the sex gets weaponized, absolutely, in order to have the men come back into the body and go, hey, I really do like having that particular body part polished. So I am going to strategically look out for my own best interests while listening to what she has to say for just a moment. And then, the moment we're out in public, she's completely dismissed, but behind the scenes, okay, just, I understand the science and the dichotomy behind that. But what I'm telling you is it's no longer effective. It's no longer working. It's no longer functioning. Men have just been told to tell us that we're overreacting, that we don't know what we're talking about, that we are now completely dismissed as any sort of human being. Completely dismissed. We're not seen as partners at all anymore. We're seen as objects to control and manipulate. It has nothing to do with any sort of companionship. It has everything to do with I have the job, or I have the external equipment, so therefore I rule the roost. And that's how it's kind of rolling out. And so when you find yourself in a paradigm where now not only is the government telling you that you probably shouldn't have the right to have your own spouse, the person you coexist with, that you promised in front of your family and some Scarface guy daddy that you are always going to be true to, is now telling you not only is your alarm system invalid, but I'm willing to put your entire existence on the line because I'm not required to care, so I'm not going to. And that's the truth of it. Men have never been required to care. That was a thing that they had to bring forth within themselves. And that has been, for lack of a better term, red pilled out of them. They are not the creatures that, maybe somebody might have brought them up to be. They're not that. They're not obligated to be. And we don't need to be forcing them into those roles, just like we don't need to force women into marriage. We don't need to force people to start caring about each other. We just need to register it and say, okay, this person clearly does not have my best interest at heart. Navigation redirected. That's how it works. That's how it's supposed to work. That's your central nervous system going, I love you. I don't get another body for a hot minute, or whatever you believe about that. So I'm going to try to preserve this particular for as long as possible. And if that means that, like, we don't involve ourselves with people that happen to be our number one predator, that's what that means. That's your central nervous system. If you want to override that, by all means, but you're not going to have a good time. You're just not going to have a good time. Okay. So either you get sovereign and safe in your own system, or you're not going to be able to have access to that in the outside world. And a lot of times, because of what's happening right now, putting trust in other human beings at this very moment is not the wisest thing to do. I think we have a couple weeks before we can really start going, okay, so Betsy over here is very much hating the fact that she's in a relationship, a committed marital relationship. And she has expressed this to me on several different occasions. And now, all of a sudden, Betsy is planning to how would I put this? To relocate with the person she knows doesn't love her. So, is Betsy going to be inside that trust circle? Nope. Betsy needs to take, the carriage off of our little ecosystem, because Betsy doesn't have her own best interest at heart. So Betsy is now a liability. You see how that works? It has nothing really to do with the feminine and masculine anymore. It's like central nervous system needs to function how it needs to function. And if I want to keep my capabilities alive, if I want to keep my intuitive nature and my particular modalities of existing that are natural, that have a purpose for me, that I very much get a lot of benefits from, then I need to make sure that what I'm doing, where I'm focusing, is not on people who are going to put me at risk. See, it's not even about like the masculine feminine. It is about the dichotomy of continuously seeking to put people in harm's way. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are programmed instinctively to do that. They will pretend to the umpteenth that that is not their modality of existing. They will pretend until they don't need to anymore. This is the system playing itself out through humanity. This is why it's so crucial to be, or at least have the aim at being authentic. I said that word with my light worker a couple weeks ago, and now it's not, I can't get it out of my system. Fine, authentic. Because she said, I think we're all autistic on some scale. And I'm like, yeah, that's authentic. Okay, here we go. So if you're on the trajectory to that, at least you can take into those spaces where you feel like you don't really feel fully embodied, where you fully belong in yourself, where you, all the nooks and crannies that like, you're like, I don't want to fill that space with anything. Well, fill it with something. See how it feels. You can always take it back out, but fill it with something. See how it feels. How does it function? What's the modality here? When you remove the narrative that society gives you, which for the feminine is to go out and be some sort of crap, some sort of I've even lost what the heck we're supposed to be for men. Okay. Some sort of gussied, don't take offense. Because I know, like, you have to present nice to the world. I get it. I'm not oblivious to that. Because even then, some misogynistic women are like, ew. But like the centralizing, I think they call it, central male-centered living. So when you remove yourself from that dichotomy of like, I'm not living with someone who's constantly criticizing me for this, that, and the other thing. So I don't have to be someone who I'm not any longer. And so that's the beauty of the paradigm, is like, I don't think we're supposed to be pair bonded that closely, because familiarity breeds contempt, I believe is the correct quote, which, yeah. So when we, again, are forced this narrative to have to kind of construct our own existence around another's existence and then take full responsibility for their existence, do you think existence is going to be very good? Because you've just taken, and this is the sad part for men, you've taken over basically all living things for him, and he just has to go get that paycheck. And then in some cases, you're actually helping him get the paycheck, because women are naturally creative. We are innovative. We give birth to new ideas. We create beautiful, wonderful meals. We create art. We create a good environment. That is our natural yin energy. We just create. And I think the jealousy probably has got a lot to do with that too, where men don't have access to that. They have to work for it. It's not inherent inside their nature. They have to work for it, which is why I think a lot of times when we find male artists, we are so in awe, because they had to do a lot of work to get to that creative space. They had to do a lot of work. They had to fight against society's norms and blah, 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 blah. We could bring up Schmittler and what happened when oh man, see what happens, Larry. Okay, so it is a programming that we have been instructed into. The only issue is that society has kind of removed the ability for the vast majority of men to fulfill that. And the ones that do have the ambition to get to the spaces where they can fulfill that role, they are not interested in having the traditional one person committed relationship. I'm not sure why we can't talk about that, but like, that sprinkle lady ain't the only sprinkle getting the sprinkles. I'm not even sure what the hell sprinkle means. I don't want to know. Anyway, the sprinkle girl is not the only one getting sprinkled. She knows it. She just doesn't care. Okay. And that's gonna bring me to the other side of the equation, where women think that because they are having this exchange, that they own the male. So that slave master thing runs both ways. They feel entitled to his entire existence because they are maintaining it for him. Because society has required that. It's just that we have been told that it is our duty, obligation, purpose, role, whatever it is, to completely puppet master his life. And now that we're going, I don't want to do that anymore, because it doesn't matter how I perform my duties. It's all wrong. It's all wrong. So we're stepping back going, I don't want to be responsible for that person's life. They are a grown-ass adult that should be able, and unfortunately, because it's been like this for thousands of years, they're going to have a real tough time coming to terms with that. Hey, maybe I shouldn't do that thing because it's a really dumb idea. Okay. So, it's a lovely little cardinal. So, when we can have an honest conversation, an honest look at, an honest, open, safe discussion about these rules that have been slapped onto us that are not going to work under this system. They're just not going to. There's no freaking way. I don't think the masculine feminine relationship, or much less even the coexisting relationships, even for the same sex couples, is going to be how it has been in the past. I think everything has to change, because the systems that we were under, with these paradigms playing out, is now crumbling. So everything's going to need to be revamped. And I don't think it's going to be anything like what it used to be. I think that The requirements and the stipulations are pretty much going to be gone, and we're going to be left to kind of feel through and explore this moving forward. And a lot of times it's just going to be like, okay, too much of the percentage of that particular population is showing up as a threat, so that population just isn't going to be welcome in some spaces. Just like if you walk into a neighborhood, in particular areas on the globe, women are at risk. Well, that's what that's going to breed when when things aren't regulated. The polar opposite of that has to pop up. It's just going to be a thing. Okay. And I think we're probably witnessing that with how Minnesota is probably going to respond to all the men in the streets and all the men in the homes doing nothing about it. Poor Minnesota, freaking cooking pot. So the temperatures turned all the way up, and because of how things have been implemented, instructed, we are about to see the results of what happens when the only thing that the vast majority of the male population is willing to protect is their own paycheck. And it's been like that for a long time. 1974 came around, and all of a sudden there's all these gold diggers, and it's like, okay, it's going to take us a hot minute. It took us a hot minute to get off of the, are you going to pay? Or because that's coded in our DNA. Even though we had the bank account access without needing a male signature, it's difficult to get out of that modality. And so we are finally getting out of it, and now all of a sudden you're even more pissed that we're not gold diggers anymore. And it's like, oh my God. So coming to the consensus that coexisting is going to be tricky for a while. If it ever comes back, I don't think it'll come back. I think it'll be like a community living situation. And, especially in Minnesota, the men are going to be vetted very heavily for the communities. So, that crack that was formed is letting that light shine through. And the pain of everything that's accumulated up until this point is being displayed via what's going on. And that's uncovering a lot of things in households that had this overwhelming presumption that because there was a male presence, that they were somehow more protected, more safe, more immune to these things happening. And that simply is not the case. It's not the case. And it's never been the case. If those men were to do anything, it would be pick up their weapons for a paycheck. That's how society and the systems at play have seen fit to program them. And just because, women might be living alongside them does not mean they override that programming. That's not how that works, because we're busy being indoctrinated ourselves into being docile, soft creatures that are just there to be malleable and little creative devices that, create nice sandwiches. And that's the extent of it. Raise the babies, make the sandwich, shut the fuck up. Oop-a-bays. So, and in exchange for that, we were thinking, well, at least he's going to protect me from everybody else who's clearly a danger. Nope, he's going to be the sole danger in your existence. And then that thus allows everything else to become a danger to you. Okay. The whole thing has been poisoned systematically, and in the most literal way possible. Literal poison. And the men will fix it. The men will take care of it. The men will do the thing. They haven't been doing anything to protect us, hardly at all. Now, granted, I've met some really powerful male protesters that knew exactly what they were doing and were out there fighting against it with little to no help. And those men are freaking fantabulous, but they're so few and far between. They're so few and far between. And they're not the typical male masculinity showing up in the world. They're not that. They're just very intelligent, caring human beings that get what the hell is actually happening. And so it's those guys that are going to probably be the ones that are doing the whole community organizing and getting in groups with women to facilitate new ways of existing in the world, because this government thing is throwing a temper tantrum as we speak. Okay, so on a global scale, it's not even EU is screwed. Dude, they don't have a freaking bone in their back. Sorry, not sorry. But they keep yelling at us like we're going to do something about it. Like we've ever had any power to tell the freaking overlords that I don't think we should be shooting people. Yeah, we've always felt that way. We've always felt that way. Like, no, we don't need to be spending money killing people. We need to be spending money feeding our children and educating them and keeping them healthy for a prosperous future so they have a good place to step into instead of okay. So for those people who just automatically perceive the fact that like Americans are all evil because blah 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 blah, sure, because your country is spectacular, squeaky fucking clean. Okay, so remembering that you have the power where you have it or you don't. And again, I gave you lists how to take all your pentacles and your resources out of these systems and structures. That's the only real power you have. That's the only real power you've ever had. That is the only power you will ever have in this system. Okay? Choices. Do you want to uplift the system or do you want to not? Sprinkle, sprinkle. Okay? So, there's your cracks. When the cracks come in, let the light shine and pull that thing out from the road. Because the pain is there instructing you, hey, this isn't natural. This is to be assessed and removed. I love you. Keep your flame.